I think that Turo is a great platform, and I like Turo, but they have some fundamental conflicts of interest that I do not like. I've written articles about this that Turo has seen, and almost every article that I have written, people comment and they say, hey, Turo is going to kick you off the platform if you are critical of them. If Turo cannot accept constructive criticism for corporate policy that is broken, honest criticism, without F-bombs, I'm not torching your stuff, I'm not sharing insider information, but if you cannot be open-minded enough to hear from your partners when you make decisions that are clearly in your benefit and on their benefits, then we're not partners. Then I'm a disposable resource, and I want to get out of this before I'm all worn out. In 2024, I started out the year with 3 cars on Turo. And I thought to myself, I would like to end up with 20 or 30 cars on Turo. But really, my strategic goal was I'd like to have 60 cars on Turo. And my reasoning for that is I really don't think that 3 cars on Turo makes any sense at all. I think that 15 cars is really the point where Turo starts to make sense and starts to have enough revenue to be an income for people. I think 20 cars, you're getting into that area where one person just cannot run the fleet alone. And I think as soon as you go over 15 cars to that 20 car range and you have to hire one more person to help you just feel like you're not on fire 24/7, then really I think the sweet spot is like 60 cars. And so we had gone from 3 cars to 20 cars over 2024, and we were hurtling towards a 60 car fleet, which I think is some economies of scale that really, really make sense. And then Turo changed the review systems in September of 2024. And it was a big enough change that I threw a full stop on our entire purchasing. It was a big enough change that me and my partners talked about selling our fleet and doing something else. Because I think they kind of ruined their review system when it comes to hosts. They ruined the reasons that you even maintain good reviews when it comes to hosts. So this post is going to be about Turo's reviews. But it's a larger conversation on how Turo treats their hosts. Because I think the change to Turo's reviews is much more indicative of Turo making decisions that are good for Turo. And I'm not going to say that are bad for hosts, but that are indifferent to hosts. I think this review change is the most concrete evidence I've seen. And over the 2 years I've been on Turo, Turo's made at least 8 major changes I can think of. And none of them have been to the benefit of hosts. They've all been to the benefit of Turo or to the benefit of guests. This is the largest example of that, and I think it just goes to show how Turo thinks about their hosts and how hosts should think about their relationship with Turo. Before you start a Turo fleet, how Turo is going to treat you and how Turo is going to change in the future is as important as anything else happening on Turo. This review change in September of 2024 is the perfect example of a major policy change with major hosting implications that actually really mattered to Turo. Last October, Turo rolled out a review process change, and effectively I think they ruined their review process as far as hosts are concerned. I think they made it so bad for hosts that most hosts that I talk to have just stopped caring about reviews entirely, which is a huge mistake. The carrot has to be there, right? The carrot has to be there out in front of the donkey. There has to be some benefit to going above and beyond. Not everyone's going to just take pride in their work. There has to be some carrot. And if the carrot is 3 miles in front of the donkey and the donkey can't even see it, or the donkey says that carrot is not even remotely close to me, there's no chance I'm ever getting that carrot, then the donkey is just going to stop bothering. And that's what Turo did with their review process. Effectively, here's what changed, all right? Turo started measuring their reviews in a bunch of different categories, which is good. I actually think this is a good idea. And they started saying, hey, your cancellation rate has to be under 3%. So that is a huge thing. I can totally get why Turo hates within 24-hour cancellations of trips. Like you book a car, you're going on vacation, you get some random email day of from a host, hey, you can't use my car. That's a crap feeling. I get it, 100%. And again, I try to be honest with Turo, but every time I write something like this and put it up in the host forums, one of the comments I get more often than anything is, hey man, you can't say that. Turo's going to kick you off the platform. Because apparently there's like a belief among hosts that if you're critical of Turo at all, they will kick you off the platform. Like they are it's super thin-skinned and they cannot accept feedback. Now, if I was dropping F-bombs and showing client data and showing car data, and if I was showing internal stuff in Turo, like if I was showing secrets, that's one thing. But all of this is very publicly facing data. And the truth is, if Turo decides to boot me, they decide to boot me. That's not going to stop me ever from being honest because there's such a recruiting campaign among so many course sellers. There's so many videos on YouTube like, oh, start a Turo business, you'll earn millions. There's so many people trying to bring people into Turo. And it's such a liability position. You're going to buy a car, you're going to have a car note, you're going to have depreciation, you're going to end up upside down on a note. There's so many bad things that can come on with it. I really like the idea of, okay, let's just be honest with how they treat their people. Let's just be honest with how this actually works. Let's be honest with the back end of this. I think there's huge value in that just to say, okay, yeah, I've done it with 21 cars. We're buying cars right now. I like what Turo offers, but it's not all upside. And I think that the earnings can be way overstated. If you've watched any of my videos on like how much do we actually earn per car, like off a $14,000 gross, we're netting to 1 to 3, right? Off a $15,000 gross, we're netting 1 to 3, right? And so these huge numbers of revenue can really, if you're not used to business, and if you're not an entrepreneur, if you've never taken a business class, you can get in and be like, wow, $15,000, and then you just get eaten alive by fees. And it can feel really, really bad, right? So let's just be candid about this. Reviews is what I'm going to cover today, all right? The cancellation rate I get, I 100% agree. If you're canceling more than 3% of your trips last minute within 24 hours, Turo has every right in the world to say, you're not for us. You're creating really bad customer-facing experiences. Now, some Turo hosts will see my numbers and be like, dude, that guy's not trying. We are trying. We have an older fleet. And that is part of the problem. When we ran our numbers and went and bought, like we ran 3,000 cars through our model. And when we did that, we realized the sweet spot to buy for us was like 2012, 13, 14 cars. They were at the bottom of their depreciation curve, right? They were the cheapest they were ever going to be, that were going to flatline out on the depreciation curve. Because what we've seen within Turo is that year of vehicle does not change price point. Trim of vehicle does not change price point. Effectively, the way Turo's model works is if it's got 4 seats, it's worth X-ish. If it's got 6 seats, it's worth Y-ish. And so what we realized is, okay, we want the most reliable minivan we can buy for the least expensive. So we looked at every minivan we could buy. We tried to find one that was reliable, so we bought 6 Honda Odysseys. The reason we didn't buy 6 Toyota Siennas is because they get almost the same exact day rate within probably 10 or 15%, but a Toyota Sienna costs twice what a Honda Odyssey does. Because it's effectively just an 8-passenger vehicle to Turo. Their pricing algorithm is these are the same. We've got 6 Fiat 500s. One of them is a Fiat 500 Abarth. So it has a turbo. It's a much more expensive vehicle. Like MSRP on a Fiat 500 is $25,000, something like that, right? The Fiat 500 Abarth, top end, everything premium on an Abarth, that's probably $35,000, 30% more expensive. They don't even show the trim level is different on Turo. And so there's no way it's pricing differently than a normal Fiat 500. And so we've just had to realize, okay, Turo, their pricing mechanism is vague. And because of that, there's no huge benefit except for reliability to buy new. But in new, you're still up on that depreciation curve. You're still paying a premium. And so when we bought our cars, we bought them strictly based on the numbers. And we bought a lot of older cars, 2012, 2013, 2014. And then Turo changed the metrics. All right. So we were fine. We were operating everything. And the way Turo used to have the metrics was, hey, you have to have out of all your reviews, you have to have a higher than 95% 5 stars. This was the way Turo did their reviews until September, October of 2024. And under that metric, we bought a bunch of cars and we did great. We were always at 97, 96. Maybe it was like 90% of all it was 90%, not 90, higher than 90%. And it was because we were always at 96 to 97% of all of our reviews were always 5 stars. Because there are going to be problems. Like we just had to accept that early on. There are going to be problems. People are going to rent a car and the check engine light's going to come on while they have it. Tire pressure monitoring systems, TPMSs, biggest scam ever. Every tire that spins 24/7 when they're working, right? And they just fail. And because they're part of the internal construction of the tire, you have to pull the whole tire apart to get to them or replace the tire. I don't even know. I just know every once in a while I get slapped with a $450 bill to replace a TPMS sensor. And we have had TPMS sensors go out on every single freaking car at 4 wheels per car. It's just constant. And it's not because the tire is flat. It's because the sensor has failed. And it's like a $450 sensor. It's just obnoxious and it's constant. And you can honestly send out a car all day, every day. Fine. You look it over, you test your tire depths, you clean it, you vacuum it, everything's fine. And when the guest has it, a check engine light comes on, especially in Fiat 500s. Good heavens! Fiat 500s are they're just so obnoxious with check engine lights. So it happens, all right? We knew we were not going to be able to maintain 100% just because that's not the world we live in. The world we live in, things happen. Things happen, especially when you buy an older fleet, which is what we did because that's where the numbers made the most sense. Now, the numbers made the most sense in the buying paradigm that we were in at the time, which was that we have to have more than 90% of all of our reviews have to be 5 stars. And so we were hanging around 96, 97%. We were happy. We thought Turo was happy, and we went on with our lives. September, October of last year, they changed it. They changed the whole review process. And I think the review process is better in some ways, and I think it is catastrophically worse in some ways. So let's go through it. They broke it into these different categories. So instead of just 90% of all reviews having to be more than 5 star, right? They changed it so that 90 or 85%, it was 85% of all trips need to be more than 5 star. You see the difference there? It's subtle. When I first read the bulletin, I was like, that shouldn't be too hard. Like 85%, they at least gave us some like runway. And then I thought about it for like 6 seconds. I was like, wait a second. That's just not harder. That's impossible. Because what they've done is they've said, because it's now going off of trips, no reviews equal bad reviews. Now, if you are new to the channel, let me give you a brief walkthrough of what we do. This is an entrepreneurship-based channel, but I try to share as much good knowledge as I can. My experience building between 17 and 30 companies, depending on how you count. If I was to start anywhere on the channel right now that you might think is interesting, I would actually start right here with Trump's Tariffs Explained. I own a bandage company. We manufacture in China and we import to the US. So the day after Liberation Day, I walked through all the intricacies of how Trump's tariffs would affect us importing from China. It's a really interesting video. It affects our product cost, building supply chains, how we price our product in the market, how those prices would have to adjust, how tariffs really express themselves for the normal consumer. I tried to even take it a little bit broader with my financial services background. I spent a decade in financial advice advising on like $300 million. I tried to even help understand how it's going to affect national security, foreign relations, looking back on how the first Trump tariffs worked over time. It was a really fun video. It was a really cool video, and it got a ton of views for our channel. Plus, I think it's maybe the best video that I've seen from anyone explaining how tariffs work and how they're affecting the economy and why they're so nebulous to put your finger on. If you're ever interested in Turo, hey, this guy's going to explain kind of every single detail from the mind of someone who started a bunch of businesses, not just one business, and from the mind of someone who's advised on a bunch of wealth, not just his own wealth, and who's, grown a couple $1 million businesses, lost it all, grown it all, lost it all a couple of times. In this video, we discuss why gold isn't actually a very good retirement asset. It's become kind of US standard financial advice that, hey, if you're concerned about inflation, just buy gold. That's terrible retirement advice. I don't care what anyone says. My firm, Bedrock, has bought over 5,000 pieces of single-family residential real estate. We talk about why single-family residential real estate is fundamentally a better retirement asset than gold is in every way, shape, or form. That's actually those two videos. This one, we're rehabbing a $1 million property. We're putting about $1.5 million into it. We're letting people watch start to finish. This one's just some more financial advice. What if rates go down? What if I'm sitting on the sidelines waiting to get into the real estate market? One of our properties that we oversee for one of our Bedrock investors got shot 67 times. As you can see, the channel's not just this one thing you're watching. It's not just entrepreneurship, right? It's all the different aspects of 7 different companies that I own. It's different overlays of the decade I spent in financial advice, advising on over $300 million. This channel is me trying to give as much good information as I can for free to do some good in the world. If that interests you, please do like and subscribe. It helps in every way that we need to grow the channel, to get more good done out in the world. Thank you guys so much. With that being said, let's go back to the thing you clicked on. You see the difference there? It's subtle. When I first read the bulletin, I was like, that shouldn't be too hard. Like 85%, they at least gave us some like runway. And then I thought about it for like 6 seconds. I was like, wait a second. That's just not harder. That's impossible. Because what they've done is they've said, because it's now going off of trips, no reviews equal bad reviews. All right? What they've done is they've said, we're going to require that all of your trips have a 5-star review. So if there's a trip that goes out and they just don't leave a review for whatever reason, right? They turn their car in, they had a good experience. They go on with their dang life. This is the first time they've used Turo or the second time they Turo, or they just don't leave reviews for whatever reason. I'm that guy. I don't leave reviews on every single Turo car. I don't leave reviews on every single whatever the crap. Like, I'll leave a review if it's really, really good or it's really, really bad. If it was just what I expected, no, I'm not, like, whatever. There's a portion of society that just doesn't leave a lot of reviews because they just don't think that is going to be counted against the business. If I understood that every time I went out and ate at a restaurant, if I didn't leave a review on Google, that restaurant would be penalized. Number one, I would think the review policy is just completely stupid. But number two, I would leave a lot more reviews, or I wouldn't. I just don't even know how that would change but it's just not something that's baked in. If every time I stayed at a hotel, I realized that if I didn't hop on Google and Yelp, that Yelp was going to penalize the hotel because they had just interpreted the data to be like, hey, if there's no review, it must have been a bad experience. No, there's a number here. If it's no review, they just, whatever. They could have been good, it could have been bad. You know how we know we don't know? Because they didn't leave a freaking review. This is so stupid. So that's what they did. They went through their numbers. And Turo's rationale for this was, we have gone through a percentage of the no reviews, and we've called these people, and we've talked to these people. And these people say that they didn't leave a review because they had a bad experience. And so they said, we think that no reviews are bad reviews. And I think the way they got to that number is they said, hey, if someone rents a Turo car and doesn't leave a review, they don't rent on Turo again. So some percentage of the behind the scenes math was either saying, wow, like the people who rent once and never again, they also don't leave reviews. And so they did a correlation and causation. They're like, we think they're not renting again because they didn't leave a review. We think that they're stealth bad reviews, right? And we think that because they are stealth bad reviews, that we need to really focus on not having no reviews, like nothing, right? And so they came out and they said, hey, you're going to have 85% of all your trips reviewed, and then they all have to be more than 5 stars. And this is the type of numbers that happen. Like the biggest players in the space, the people I actually look at who I say, hey, this is their full-time gig. This isn't like a side thing so they can build some really interesting YouTube content. This isn't a side thing so they can get some sweet tax deductions. This isn't a side thing to diversify their portfolio, which is us. Like I've got 7 companies. This is a side thing so I can provide some employment and so I can diversify my cash on cash and get a sweet deduction off of these cars. I've got a different goal than a lot of people here. But I've looked at these big hosts that have 300, 400, 500 cars. They all lost power host status. None of them hit this 85% 5 star. Like the only people that I knew managed to hit this number between September of last year and January of this year, where like they did a reassessment. And the reason this all matters is if you don't have higher than 85% of your trips a 5 star review, then you don't qualify for Power Host. Or that could be All-Star Host. Power Host support is the good phone number with US-based customer service who knows a little bit about the terms of service and can like, and it is vaguely competent. Because Turo, really, to work on Turo, you have to be an expert on the terms of service. Because if the terms of service say it, they'll honor it. If the terms of service don't say it, they won't honor it. And I'll give you one example. Okay, so the other day we had a driver's license check come through. Before you send out a Turo car, they submit their driver's license, and you, the host, are responsible for looking at the driver's license and saying, yes, the birthday's right, yes, the driver's license is valid, yes, the name matches on the driver's license, the name on the Turo account. Behind the scenes, in the terms of service, if you don't do all of those things and there's an accident, you're going to get hung out to dry because you're going to have violated Turo's terms of service. And so they're not going to insure the trip. If an accident happens, someone's going to go through the check-in, check-out process with a fine-tooth comb. And they're going to make sure that you played by terms of service. And if Billy booked the account on Billy's account and Jack showed up and picked up the vehicle with Jack's license and your people let the vehicle go, you're going to get hung out to dry because you didn't do your part of the job when it comes to terms of service. I had a client the other day submit a driver's license. I'm going to call her La Danielle. And her driver's license said La Danielle, but her Turo account said Danielle. Because at some point in the Turo registration process, she had written Danielle, where her driver's license was actually La Danielle. And so La Danielle emailed us and said, hey, for some reason your staff isn't approving my trip. And I took a quick look at it and I said, your driver's license says La Danielle and your name is Danielle on Turo. I cannot release this car because these names don't match. And it was so stupid. You're yelling at the screen right now. I can feel it from the screen. Hey, that's really stupid. It is really stupid. But what I'm not going to do is hand someone a $30,000 vehicle only to have Turo catch me in a technicality if there's an accident and say, we're not covering that. We asked you to make sure the name and the Turo account matched, and they don't. So good luck with that. I'm not going to do that. And I trust Turo to hold me to the terms of service. So, a lot of power host support, a lot of customer support when it comes to Turo is talking to them about terms of service. And US based English speaking primary language, literate in English reading, are just easier to work with when it comes to what the terms of service say and what the terms of service mean. I speak another language. Hablo español fluentemente. Yo viví en Venezuela por 2 años. Yo hablo español como un gringo, bien como un gringo. Okay? I speak Spanish. I am almost illiterate in Spanish. You hand me a legal document in Spanish, and I'm going to be like, there's a difference in speaking a language fairly fluently. I'm fairly fluent in Spanish. And reading that language fluently. I'm almost illiterate in Spanish. And I'm bright enough to understand that there's a difference. Now, if you've never spoken another language fluently, you might not realize that someone who can read very simple stuff in Filipino, for example, might not be able to have a really nuanced conversation around the legalities of a 70-page legal document. And so what Turo hosts run into all the time is they're like, dude, that's not what terms of service says. And the person on the other end doesn't even understand what you're talking about. They're like, terms of service clearly says this. And the person on the other end is like murkily literate in English reading. And so they're like, no, I don't think it says that, or whatever. It's really frustrating. So the number one benefit to having great reviews this whole time has been US based English speaking PowerHost support. In fact, I'm pretty sure that's why they did this whole change. Because Turo was trying to go public last year and they brought in a new CEO last year and they were trying to get all their numbers tweaked so they could go public and all make billions of dollars. And I think someone looked at their line items of expenses and realized that having US based power support, technical phone support, was one of the more expensive line items. And then they looked at what percentage of Turo hosts qualify as power host. And they said something like 90% of Turo hosts get power host status. And so they realized, wait, we're just providing this to basically everyone. It's basically free to everyone. So we're not using our foreign customer support well enough. And we're just providing this to everyone. So let's change it around and make it a little bit harder to get. What they did was make it impossible or virtually impossible because of the way the new reviews work. So effectively, what happened? Let's see if we can break one of these out. 74.5%. So you can see I'm failing in every single one of these metrics. And if I piss Turo off bad enough, they'll use this or another trumped up reason to say, hey, Jeremy's a bad Turo host. He should not be on. And they'll kick me off. And that'll be that. And I'll go to something else with my time and my money. But these are all yellow. They can go green, yellow, red. Right? Red means you're at risk of getting kicked off the platform. I think this maintenance rate hits red at 65%. And then all these just stay yellow until 65% or something like that. I've seen red once before. Again, I have an older fleet, so I've just accepted, hey, these are the cars we bought. These are the cars we own. If we buy more cars, we'll buy newer cars because I can see that as we rotate out the fleet, it will be useful to change the composition of the fleet to newer cars just because I think that the older cars that we bought do have more mechanical issues. I get it. Those do represent a worse customer service experience. I get it. If the client wasn't okay with an older Honda Odyssey, they would have booked something else. So I also get that I'm providing a price point that the client's okay with and that we send out every single car inspected and checked. But things happen and things happen more to older vehicles. I get this. I'm fine with the rules of the game. My biggest problem with this whole review policy is this right here. It is that you start off failing, right? You have to have more than 85% of all your reviews 5-star and 20% of guests don't rate. That's with us requesting a rating at the beginning of the trip, requesting a rating at the end of the trip,
checking in with the guests 24 hours before the end of the trip, making sure there's no problems. We've even gone an extra mile. Like we have a small cooler, like a small cloth cooler about this big, that we put a like a printed note. We fill that cooler with like a Coke and water and a Red Bull or whatever, like three drinks. And we cool down ice packs that we put in the cooler. And we say, hey, we know you have a choice to work with anyone. Thank you for choosing us. Here's some free drinks for your trip. Like we go above and beyond everything we can do to get reviews. And even with that level of begging for reviews, which we're forced to do because of Turo's policy, but even with that level of begging for reviews, 20% of people don't rate. And so that means out of 100%, we start out minus 20%. We start out at 80%, and we're supposed to be at 85% or better. So what happens with this, they've created a carrot that's so far into the future, that's so impossible to maintain, that people just stop caring about their reviews entirely. They're like, screw it. If I can't possibly get PowerHost, if there's no reason to maintain my reviews, then screw it. Like I can't possibly do it. I'm not going to be able to force people to rate their trips. I'm not going to be able to do that. That's impossible. And there's no way to do that. And so because somewhere between 15 to 25% of people don't rate at all ever, it makes people just stop caring about reviews at all. Because why bother? Like, why bother if you can't, even if they've set an artificial metric? If you're in high school and they're like, hey, just so you know, if you don't get a 97 or above, you fail. Okay, so mark me up for a failure, I guess. Like a 97 or above in every single class. I'm not good at some of these classes. So with that being the case, they've created a standard that's unachievable for reasons that are nebulous or questionable. Was every single unrated client mad? Was every single one, or was there percentage of unrated clients that were mad? I'm going to bet money that it was a percentage. And I would bet that percentage was probably like 30%. That's my guess. A third of unrated clients were mad. And so they ginned up this kind of garbage excuse to throw everyone off PowerHost. At the same time that they're trying to generate really good numbers to go and do their IPO so they can sell off their stock and become millionaires. And they use this excuse to outsource all their PowerHost to the Philippines and pay a lot less for it. Or they just developed a policy that doesn't work in any way, shape, or form. It just doesn't work. Best guy in the platform, I think. I'm gonna call spade a spade. I think the most competent guy on the platform is Alvin Cleanliness out of Jacksonville, Florida. He's got the most dialed in, most well reasoned, most well thought, largest fleet. Like even Alvin Cleanliness lost powerhouse status over this. And it's, dude, if that guy can't maintain powerhouse status, I cannot maintain powerhouse status because that guy has been doing this for like 15 years longer than me. That guy has 5 full-time employees. That guy has got his numbers dialed into the tightest you could possibly have. And even he lost powerhouse status over this garbage because this garbage is not well thought through. That's the Turo review process. And unfortunately, I think it is fundamentally broken. And I think that it's one of those changes that they haven't even made an effort to address. It's now been almost 6 months since they did this change, and it's just not going to change. And that's sad. Fortunately for me and for Turo, it didn't affect my business that much. Like it made us concentrate less on reviews. It made us frustrated with Turo. We stopped buying cars for almost a year, and it didn't affect our revenue that much. I think what it really did more than anything was drove more hosts off the platform just because they're so frustrated with how they're being treated, which makes it so there's fewer cars on the platform. And the hosts that are on the platform have to be better hosts. And so maybe it like left us in the platform because we were really good hosts. We have a decent sized fleet. We make decent money. But yeah, it didn't affect us hardly at all, except for the fact that our customer support took a huge header. Like it just took a huge dive. But there's no good way to know how your reviews are doing. Like the best information you can get is this stuff, like percentages. Unless you go by, and I can't show you this, they show every review and then you can look at the full review and you can look at the 5 different sections and see where you were rated on each of the 5 sections. Unless you go through every single review and look at every single section and add them all up, there's no way to know. Okay. So what you do, what I can know is out of my trips unrated, I'm at about 20%. That means I start off with this number at 81%, right? And that does add up because if I'm saying, hey, my base is 81%, then I can get to all the other math pretty straightforwardly. Like if my base is 81% of just unrated, what that means is maintenance had a 9% fail rate. Cleanliness had a 6% fail rate. Accuracy had a 4% fail rate. And communication had a 32% fail rate, something like that, 2% fail rate. So if that's the case, and we just said, okay, let's subtract out the non-reviews and let's take this off a base rate of 100%, even having some maintenance issues, we would have been saying, like maintenance is 72 from 81. That's 9%. So we would have been saying, hey, I'm at 91%, I'm at 94%, I'm at 96%, and I'm at 98%. And historically hovered between 95 and 96%. And so you can just see that would have held. It held steady. We didn't change our business that much. We really didn't because we realized really early on this is almost impossible to maintain. And what we've seen with fleets is the larger your fleet, the harder it is to maintain that because the more TPMS sensors and the more smoking claims and the more dead batteries and the more random check engine lights, the more cars you have, the more of those problems that will occur. And so large fleets just, I don't think this is even possible to maintain. I think it's fundamentally broken. It's bad design, poorly executed. I do not think that this works, and I think it demotivates hosts. I think it just doesn't. It was really frustrating. It did not feel like we were being treated like partners at all. It was a really frustrating change that Turo did last year. The new rules of the game, and so what you can see here is cleanliness. All right, there's no way that I have found to go in here and see how many of those reviews had problems with cleanliness. And we've looked at this a bunch of different ways. For example, maintenance. There's no way I can go in here and say, okay, how many of these less than 5-star reviews were because of maintenance? There's some ways to get an idea. Here's what you can do. All right, so if I look at my reviews, there's going to be a certain amount that are just dumb. That you caught someone on the wrong day. Anyone who's ever worked in retail understands there are going to be reviews that are just dumb. This first review is just a perfect example of that. It's a perfect example of how a misunderstanding and a little bit of bad luck turned into just a 1-star review. So we understand. We understand that there are going to be 1-star reviews, there are going to be 3-star reviews, there are going to be 4-star reviews, because if I'm candid, not all of us see reviews the same way, but this one is great. This just barely happened. We just got this 1-star, and it basically revolves around 3 problems. Number 1, we got at the flight, the lockbox where the key is wouldn't open. Turo had texted me the wrong combination. So number 1, did we give them the wrong combination? Let's look at that. Number 2, once we got in the van, so she was already torqued. She was annoyed that she couldn't get into the van. Number 2, we got in the van, discovered the headlight was burned out. That's a problem, but that can happen. All right, like we check our headlights every single time, but that can happen. A headlight can just blow when you put current to it. But I understand that can happen. So number 2, headlight was blown out. I contacted Jeremy. He said he was sent someone on the morning to replace the headlight. One of them, his crew members came to my location about 20 minutes before I needed to drive to a group chat. So number 2, we offered to go out and replace a headlight, and we got there. It's looking like just later than she wanted. Interesting. Let's look at that. So number 2, we got to there to replace a headlight later than she wanted. Number 3, my group came back and the van was dead. I would have been annoyed too, right? Now, we got the car from someone, we washed the car, we gave the car to them, they cranked the car, they drove the car to wherever they were going, they went to this group thing, they came back and the van battery was dead. Hard to believe that's not some sort of user error because batteries don't just die. Batteries die when you leave an interior dome light on. Batteries die when you leave the headlights on. So maybe you're checking the headlights to make sure they're on. You put them in the always on and you leave them and walk away from the car, which is probably what happened. So it's probably some sort of user error. And so this lady at this point is hyper torqued with us, hyper torqued. We offered to swap her out, and by that point, she was just super, super torqued, right? So you're gonna get a bad review. You're gonna get a bad review. But if you look at this text, and you look at it, the number one problem she had was we gave her the wrong combination. Now, this rental started at 5 or 6 p.m. Their flight got delayed, so they were already probably a little torqued. But their flight got delayed. We sent a text at 5 p.m., which is just a standard text we send to everyone. Hey, the lockbox pin is 4927. Here's where the car is. There might be a fee when you get out. Just trying to be really communicative, let them know everything. And then at 8:12, we get a random text out of the blue. Hey, I can't get into the lockbox with 4479. Of course you can. It's wrong. It's the wrong number. All right. They said we gave them the wrong number. It looks like what happened is they just read it way wrong because 4479 and 4927, we had sent this text. Like that's the way we do this. And so they read it wrong or something. And then they said the double four seems to be the problem. Okay, cool. It seems to be the problem. The code is 4297. That's sent through it. I can't get the 447 to do it. This is this text right here. The code is 4297, sent at 8:15. This whole problem started at 8:12, so 3 minutes of back and forth. And then my team, within the same minute, because there's no timestamp here, says, excuse me, it's 4927, which is this number, which we had provided at 5 o'clock. And they say, okay, 4297 worked, which I'm pretty sure is wrong. She meant 4927 worked, whatever. And then my team was like, hey, how did you get 4479? And they said, you texted it to me, which we don't do. We just always send out this auto text specifically because it's automatic. And so you can clearly see, like, we sent them information clearly. They put in some weird A number. They got annoyed with us. My person inverted some numbers here, but they corrected it within a minute. And then they got into the car. That whole process took 4 minutes, but it set the client off, right? When the headlight was an issue, they were already annoyed. We offered to have them swap out. Hey, just call Turo. We'll come out and get the vehicle. You can get a different vehicle. We offer to swap them into a different minivan. We have 6 of those, and it is what the hell. So what I want to help you understand is even if you do your best effort, if you communicate clearly, if you offer to swap them into a different vehicle, if you drive 45 minutes one way to replace a headlight, they can still be just pissed off. So there's going to be a certain percentage of guests who are 1 star or 2 star or 3 star or 4 star. I just understand that as a part of doing business. There's going to be a certain percentage of people you catch on the wrong day, you can't please them, right? And so with that being the case, I think it's really important to look at the overall Turo numbers. And that's this. All right. So they give us, with that being the case, we need to look at the overall Turo reviews. And that's this. When we look at these and try to break them down a little bit, low tire pressure is 13 mentions in reviews. That's a TPMS sensor. As I said, that's just obnoxious. Low tire pressures happen, and they happen when you're on a trip if those TPMS sensors fail. Now, we can always pay the 450 bucks to replace them, but every car has 4 tires. Every single TPMS sensor that exists is total trash, and they're just going to break. And so you can see that's just a really common failure point. Okay, cool. Unpleasant smell. I wonder if every car I have smells like skunk or if every car I have smells like weed or smoke. And I wonder if Turo, I don't know, made it impossible to collect a smoking fee and impossible to enforce people not smoking your vehicles if you would get an unpleasant smell complaint. And I wonder why that unpleasant smell complaint isn't, it smells like smoke. Because the way Turo's contract works is I, the host, have a contract with Turo that I will get paid $50 a day, let's say. Turo has a contract with the guest that the guest will pay $100 a day or whatever that is. My contract's with Turo. That's one of the things I like about Turo. I'm not worried about the guest stiffing me. I'm not worried about the guest giving me a bad debit card. I'm not worried about the guest doing a credit card and then doing a chargeback because the truth is my contract is with Turo. Right? Turo is going to pay me whether the guest pays them or not. And so that is really one of the good parts about Turo that I quite like. One of the bad parts of that is it creates a conflict of interest. For example, if there is an after rental problem, for example, hypothetically speaking, a $250 smoking fee, and Turo has already charged their card and we say, hey, there's a smoking fee, and Turo says, okay, you've given us enough evidence, there's smoking ash, there's cigarettes, whatever the crap. There's a text message from the person saying I smoked in your car, which used to be accepted as evidence and isn't now because we had used that a bunch of times. Hey, this, that, and the other, it seems like you're smoking. Yeah, my buddy was smoking. Cool. Okay, cool. A 250 fee. You can't use that anymore. They've made it virtually impossible to collect a smoking fee. So that $250, my contract is not with the guest. My contract is with Turo. So Turo has to pay me that $250. And then Turo has to go and collect that $250 from the guest. And if Turo is marketing to someone who's using, for example, a prepaid debit card, which we know they've allowed, and that prepaid debit card only had enough money for the rental, and the prepaid debit card is dead, then what Turo has actually done is by allowing smoking fees to be collected, they've taken $250 out of their own pocket because my contract's with Turo. So there's a conflict of interest there. If there's anything after the initial money is collected, then Turo's on the line to collect those fees so that they're not out money. And I think Turo has realized it is very, 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 very difficult to collect from some of their clientele because some of their clientele understand that you can smoke in a Turo car and they won't charge you. So they have started to attract a clientele that does smoke. And this 10 unpleasant smells isn't because every car I have smells like feet or every car I have smells like skunk. It's because a lot of my cars smell like smoke because Turo has ripped the teeth out of their smoking policy because Turo didn't want to pay the $250 fee because Turo couldn't figure out how to get reimbursed. Also, because some hosts, and every one of you is garbage, some hosts abused it. And so now all of us get to deal with these repercussions of just having our vehicles smoked in all the time. So yeah, my highest ding on cleanliness is smell. Awesome. Well, make it so people don't smoke in my cars. We'll be able to keep them clean. That's not what they're doing. So that's a little bit obnoxious. Photos. Interesting. Like 77 photos. There's a lot of photos. Location, listing description, seat count. I don't know how any of those happen. Someone's just, I don't like this for the photos. The photo looked better than the car looks. I don't know. Every photo looks decent. All right. And weird. Anyways, whatever. And then you get down here, communication. We're responsive. Our attitude's good. Whatever, whatever. They said we don't respond fast enough for them. My people get frustrated. Clearly, sometimes it happens. So interesting. You can look at this and you can break this down. But what you can't do is you can't. Oh, and this is Fiat 500s. Check engine lights, Fiat 500s. Don't do it. Low car battery, that does happen. Brakes, every once in a while, brakes. Anyways, just cars are cars. I think you're going to see here. This is all very typical stuff. So that is my fundamental problem with it. I think it creates an unachievable standard of success, and it's just poor business design, poor business execution. So with that being the case, that is the ratings fiasco from 2024. I still like Turo. I'm still on Turo. I'm still buying cars on Turo. It might not sound that way, but before you go and take out a loan to buy a $45,000 Jeep and throw it on Turo because you think, hey, I might be able to get out of my day job by doing this, you should really know that Turo has its pros and its cons. One of the cons is they tend to make changes to the platform that are at the expense of hosts. And some of those changes are not well thought through and actually don't accomplish what they say and might be to fix their books so they can do an IPO. If you're enjoying this content, this isn't a Turo channel. This is an entrepreneurship channel. I have 7 companies right now. My real estate company, we've helped people buy like 5,000 properties all over the US. If you want to talk real estate specifically, I would watch Never Buy Rentals Here. I walk you through how we look at buying properties. We're buying right now in 7 major markets. We're buying in like Ocala and Memphis and Oklahoma City and Charlotte and Bentonville, Arkansas, and one or two more that I can't think of off the top of my head. But we're buying rentals all over the country, me and my team. And that's a video we just used to say, hey, here's how you build a box. Here's how you see what's a good deal and what's not a good deal. Here's how you compare one market to another market. That's a fascinating video. You might enjoy that. If you want more financial advice style conversation, you might enjoy this one right here, the number one asset to beat inflation. There's a shorter version of that up top, which is gold isn't the answer or something like that. But the number one asset to beat inflation is a really good video. It was an hour and a half conversation that I had with a financial services house. And we did a webinar together where we talked about all the reasons that gold isn't as good an asset to retire with as like rental real estate is, specifically 30-year fixed interest rental real estate. That's an awesome conversation. If you want to just talk more about investing and retirement planning, I was in investing and retirement planning for a decade. I oversaw about 300 million. If you want more just interesting financial stuff that we're doing, we're rehabbing a big, beautiful $1 million house. We're putting about $1.5 million into it. It's got a big, like 500-foot long granite sliding rock where the river comes down into two ponds. It's an awesome house. It's awesome. And we're walking through slowly every piece of that house and every piece of the renovation and how the finances are going and what our exit strategy looks like. That's a cool video. And then if you just want more Turo content, that's what I'll put right here. I'm going to put I built a Turo fleet fast. It's basically at the end of 1 year on Turo, I did a look back. I talked about what we bought, how we bought, when we bought, why we bought, when we brought investors in, what the initial profitability looked like, what my feelings were after a year. If you want to look at more Turo content, I'm going to put that right here. Thank you for watching.